So let's talk about what food you should be eating every day. So what I've got going on here in this display is an actual depiction of what a day of eating should look like. So let's walk through each of the types of foods that you're going to be eating, and then I'm going to show you some of the ways that you can be putting them together. So let's look at fruit first. First of all, I want you to remember that fruit is your friend. Fruit can sometimes get a bad reputation in some of the fad diets, and you may be concerned, oh, there's so much sugar in fruit. You don't need to worry about that. Fruit is full of goodness that is going to get you to your goal of optimum health, ideal weight, and your maximum enjoyment of life. Okay, so what kind of fruit should you be eating every day? Well, you should be including at least a half of a cup of berries. These are blueberries here. You should be including 3 servings of other kinds of fruits. It doesn't have to be all blueberries all the time. Yes, they are the superheroes of the antioxidant world, but there's tons of other wonderful goodness that you're getting from other fruit besides just berries. So what does that look like? Well, a serving size of the 3 other fruits that you're eating would be like a medium-sized piece of fruit, like a good old apple. You don't need to get fancy. A cup of cut-up fruit. This is an example of a cup of cut-up pineapple. Or a 1/4 cup of dried fruit. So this is an example of 2 medjool dates. So this would be a great idea for a snack or something like that. So that's your fruit. You definitely want to be eating lots of vegetables. Vegetables are just one of those things that is going to give you such an edge in that teeter-totter when you're trying to get to planet good health. But it's not all dark leafy greens all the time. That's an important part of eating your vegetables, absolutely. But there's other vegetables that you also need to be eating to make sure that you're getting enough variety to get all the nutrients and all the goodness that you want to get. So cruciferous vegetables, you should be getting at least a half a cup of cruciferous vegetables every day. What is a cruciferous vegetable? Cruciferous vegetables are the vegetables that you probably had to be browbeaten into eating when you were a kid. There are things like broccoli and Brussels sprouts and cabbage and cauliflower, all those good things. So you should be eating a half a cup of those every day. You should also be eating at least 2 cups of greens every day. So I've got some examples here. That's what a cup of spinach looks like. That's a cup of just regular salad mix. So you want to look for ways in the day that you can be getting in at least 2 cups of greens. And then you want to get in 2 additional servings of other kinds of vegetables, and there's a lot of them to choose from, a delicious variety. When you go to the produce section in your grocery store, just explore and buy whatever grabs your interest. So you want to be having 2 servings of other kinds of vegetables. So if you're chopping up vegetables like a sweet potato, for example here, you want to be having a half cup. Don't forget there are vegetables that we sort of take for granted, but your onion counts, for example, as a serving of vegetable. That's a half a cup of chopped up onion. Super easy to use, right? So fruits, vegetables, fruits 4 servings, vegetables 5 servings. And then you'll also want to be getting in your beans every day. Now beans, legumes, pulses, they're all in the same family. And oftentimes those are the things that get neglected when we're eating in a standard North American way, standard American diet, sorry. And so beans are one of those things where if you eat 3 servings of beans a day, there's studies that show that eating those 3 servings of beans a day can add 2 years to your life expectancy. So eat 3 servings of beans a day, you live 2 years longer. You may be thinking, 3 servings of beans a day? Seriously? Okay, let me show you what that looks like because it's not really as daunting as it sounds. A serving of beans can be just a little 1/4 cup of a bean spread. So this is an example of a 1/4 cup of hummus. You can make bean spreads out of any kinds of beans, but you can see it's not very much. It'll be really easy to eat that. It's a half a cup of cooked beans. These are an example of black beans. This is an example of red lentils. So a half a cup of cooked beans. So look at these 2 things together and then picture a big old bowl of chili. You can imagine that it would be really easy to actually get your 3 servings of beans in just one meal if you wanted to. But let's say you're not a all beans all at once, all one meal, it's also really easy to space this out during the day. You can throw a handful of beans here and a handful of beans there into things, and you're hardly going to notice they're there. They don't need to be the superstar of your meal. But look for ways that you can get your 3 servings of beans in. Whole grains. Whole grains is kind of like the bookends here. Whole grains also get kind of a bad reputation as the evil carbs in most of the world of popular diets that are out there. They are not. We've already talked about them a little bit, so now I want to just show you what the actual serving sizes of whole grains look like. So first of all, concentrating on the whole grains that are actually like really those whole seed grains, this is what half a cup of steel cut oatmeal for the morning looks like. Super easy, it really wouldn't take long to eat that, not a huge amount. And this is what half a cup of a mix, it's actually a mix of brown and red rice. It's one of my favorites. If you want to steer clear of white rice, that is definitely one of those processed refined foods. But some people do find adjusting to brown rice can be a little tricky. So I love to do this combination of brown and red rice because it makes it a little less overwhelming and delicious, and a great way to get one of your half cup servings of whole grains into your day. So you want to get 3 servings of whole grains into every day. Now I have this out because I wanted to show you this example. When it comes, as we talked about before, it's better to eat the whole grain itself that you cook yourself, but it is also okay to be eating whole wheat bread or bagels or wraps or whole wheat pasta. You just want to watch your how much of that you're eating. So this is a serving size. This is one of your 3 serving sizes of whole grains, and this is just half a bagel. Okay. So if you can, try to get at least 2 of your 3 servings of whole grains from the actual whole grain that you cook yourself. And the final 2 things that I want to show you are the seeds and nuts categories. You want to make sure that you are getting a tablespoon of ground flax seeds every day. And you also don't want to neglect your nuts. Nuts have tremendous health-giving properties. So this is what a 1/4 cup of nuts looks like. These are walnuts, a 1/4 cup of walnuts. The other serving size would be 2 tablespoons of a nut butter. Kind of like with the whole grains, better to eat the actual whole nut, but a whole nut butter is also okay, like a peanut butter or an almond butter or cashew butter that has nothing else added, it's just the nuts. One word of caution for the amount of nuts that you're eating each day is when you transition into the world of whole food plant-based eating and you start looking into recipes and buying cookbooks, one of the things that you're going to notice is that a lot of recipes start by calling for a cup of cashews. And when you start blending up cashews and putting them into recipes, you are not going to miss cream, you're not going to miss cheese. It really does add that wonderful rich texture to it. But a word of caution, eating a cup of cashews is not something that is going to be something that you want to do every day. It's not great for your health, and it's not great for your waistline either. So the ideal serving amount for nuts is a 1/4 cup of nuts a day. You don't want to skip the nuts. They have great, wonderful value. You just don't want to overdo the nuts. Okay, so why have I put these out in these fancy little jars? Well, I wanted to give you a quick visual of one of the things that can be overwhelming when you start eating a whole food plant-based diet is to come up with ideas of how do I get all this in every day? How do I cook it? Where do I find all the recipes I need? And starting to think along those lines of, oh my goodness, I have to cook from a recipe 3 times a day. You don't. Why I've set this out like this is to show you that you can think of these as actual building blocks that are really easy to put together, and a lot of them don't even need a recipe. So for example, you could take something like in the morning, you could start with your half a cup of steel cut oats or any kind of whole grain that you're using. You could add in your cup or your half a cup of blueberries into that. You could throw your 1/4 cup of walnuts on top of that. And then you could go ahead and you could add your tablespoon of flax seeds. Let's say you wanted to throw a little color onto that, you could chop up your beautiful apple on top of that. You see how that works together as a building block? And then let's say you're trying to come up with a good idea for lunch. Lunch can be challenging, especially if you're trying to steer clear of the standard American diet. Lunch can be actually one of the hardest meals. Well, you know what you could do? You could make yourself a delicious, you can make all this stuff in advance and throw it together as you leave in the morning. You can make yourself a delicious grain bowl with brown and red rice. You can add in, let's see, what else could you add into that? You could put in your broccoli. You could put in your spinach. You could add in your sweet potatoes if you wanted. You could put in your lentils. You could top the whole thing with hummus. You see how easy all these building blocks go together so beautifully. Then maybe you want to have an afternoon snack. You could have some, some medjool dates, and you could have your half a bagel at that point. Then for dinner, by the time you get to dinner, and you should actually eat your bigger meals at lunch and breakfast. So by the time you get to dinner, you're left with your onions, and you've got your black beans, and you've got some salad ingredients, and that's a really quick, easy meal that you could have. Maybe you could even throw your sweet potatoes with that. So basically, think of these things as a mix and match thing, so that you do not have to be rethinking the way you cook everything all the time. Think of these as mix and match building blocks.